You'll be rewarded tonight in my bed." The alien noblewoman whispered Elia's ward had always believed that diplomacy was a matter of listening more than speaking. He had spent years on Earth mastering languages, reading human behavior, and learning how to navigate situations without causing offense. Now he found himself on the distant world of Sere, a planet where etiquette was as intricate as its towering crystal cities, and where the rules of interaction were almost as alien as the inhabitants themselves. Elias was nervous, but not for the usual reasons. Here, misreading a gesture could be considered an insult serious enough to end a career, or worse, a life of social exile. The Sarians were humanoid, yes, but with their elegance amplified to the point of being almost unreal. Their limbs were long, movements deliberate and graceful, and their eyes shimmered with colors that humans could not easily describe. Among them, Lady Valith Saren stood apart. She was a noblewoman of considerable influence, known for her sharp mind and her ability to see through social pretense with ease. It was she who had invited Elias to the court, a gesture both terrifying and flattering. Elias entered the grand hall cautiously. The walls glimmered with a soft light, refracting off the polished floors and reflecting countless colored patterns that danced across the room. A group of nobles observed him quietly, their expressions unreadable to someone unfamiliar with Sarian culture. The air was heavy with the subtle tension of anticipation, the kind that told him that every word, every glance would be scrutinized. Lady Valith approached, her presence commanding but not oppressive. "Welcome, Elias Ward," she said, her voice soft but carrying a weight that made him straighten instinctively. "I hope your journey was comfortable." "It was, thank you, Lady Valith," Elias replied, bowing slightly, though he quickly realized that a Sarian bow was more complex than any human gesture he had ever attempted. He adjusted, trying to mirror her posture as best as he could. "Your hospitality is extraordinary." He felt awkward even as he said it, aware that to a human, such words might sound formal, but here they carried layers of meaning. She smiled, a brief curve of lips that seemed almost shy in its subtlety. "You flatter me, but I am curious about your kind. Humans are unpredictable, and yet you are here attempting to understand us. That is rare." Elias felt a flicker of hope. "We value understanding above all else. We believe that connection can be a bridge even between worlds." The noblewoman's eyes brightened ever so slightly. "A bridge, yes, but one must walk carefully. A misstep can collapse it." She tilted her head, observing him as if weighing his soul. "Tell me, Elias, do you know what the reward is for a guest who succeeds in understanding the heart of a Sarian noble?" Elias paused, unsure if she was speaking literally or metaphorically. I cannot say. I hope it is something honorable." She leaned closer so that her voice was barely above a whisper. "You'll be rewarded tonight in my bed." Elias froze. The words sounded scandalous, even in translation, and he felt heat rise to his cheeks. He had no frame of reference for what she meant. Did she literally mean a bed? Was this a challenge, a test? Or had he misunderstood the cultural context entirely? He forced a smile, hoping it would mask his confusion. I am honored, Lady Valith. I will do my best to be worthy." The noblewoman's lips curved into an amused smile, and she straightened again. The court observers exchanged glances, some of them raising delicate eyebrows. To Elias, it seemed as though the entire hall had shifted its attention solely onto him. He realized, with a mix of fear and fascination, that in Sarian society, the concept of reward might be something far different from what he had imagined. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of introductions, subtle gestures, and intricate ceremonies that Elias struggled to follow. He listened more than he spoke, as he always had, noting every detail. The way a noble's hand rested on the arm of their chair, the precise angle of a bow, the rhythm of their voice when speaking to someone of equal rank. Every small sign mattered. Every misstep could be catastrophic, though Elias began to notice that Lady Valeth seemed genuinely interested in his reactions, rather than judging him harshly for his mistakes. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a soft violet glow over the city, Elias was led to a chamber prepared for him. It was elegantly simple, with soft mats and cushions arranged in a way that invited rest rather than indulgence. A small device in the corner hummed quietly, releasing a gentle light that made the room feel warm and calm. Elias hesitated at the threshold, uncertain if he should wait for Lady Valeth or enter alone. Before he could decide, the door opened and she stepped in, carrying an air of quiet authority. "You may be tired," she said, her voice gentle. "This is your reward in a manner of speaking. Rest, Elias. Share the space with me if you wish." No words are required, only presence. Elias' mind raced. This was not a challenge of physical intimacy, as he had feared. It was something far more subtle, a test of his capacity to be present, to offer sincerity without the expectation of advantage or manipulation. He nodded slowly, understanding for the first time the weight of the promise she had whispered. He would not merely observe, he would engage in a ritual of trust. The evening passed in quiet companionship. They sat across from each other, not speaking much, but exchanging emotions through their expressions, small gestures, and the calm energy that filled the room. Elias shared stories of Earth, of human families, of laughter and music, and the strange ways humans found comfort in one another. Lady Valeth listened, her eyes reflecting light in a way that seemed almost like a mirror of his own thoughts. She, in turn, revealed fragments of her life, her fears, and the loneliness that her status often imposed. Elias felt a profound connection forming, a bridge of understanding that transcended words and species. As the hours passed, the court's observers would later describe the scene as remarkable. Here was a human, untrained in Syrian social rituals, yet managing to connect with a noblewoman in a way that none of her own kind had achieved. And here was Lady Valeth, a woman accustomed to control and strategy, allowing herself to be seen in full vulnerability. The silent exchange of trust, laughter, and empathy was powerful enough to rewrite the expectations of those who witnessed it. By the time Elias finally retired to a quiet corner of the chamber, he felt a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. He had survived the afternoon, yes, but more importantly, he had understood something essential about the Syrians, and perhaps about humanity itself. Connection, honesty, and openness could carry a human farther than any skill in negotiation or any technological advantage. Lady Valeth watched him for a moment before turning toward the door. "You may leave now, Elias, but remember, the reward is not finished. The journey has only begun." Elias paused, looking back at her. He could only nod. The meaning of her words was clear. The test was not over, and his role as a bridge between species had only just begun. And yet, for the first time since his arrival, he felt that he was not merely a visitor in a strange world. He was someone capable of offering something unique, something no technology or military might could replace. He could give understanding, empathy, and honesty. Outside the chamber, the city's lights glimmered like distant stars, and Elias felt a deep sense of wonder. The universe was vast, filled with strange civilizations and alien customs, but perhaps humanity had a place after all, not as conquerors or manipulators, but as connectors, as beings capable of sharing presence, trust, and emotion. And in that quiet realization, he found a reward far greater than anything he could have imagined. As he lay down, the words Lady Valeth had whispered earlier echoed in his mind. He understood now that they were not a test of desire, but a promise of something more profound, the recognition of humanity's unique strength. And with that thought, Elias drifted into a restful sleep, ready to face whatever challenges the next day would bring. Elias awoke to the soft hum of the chamber's light. The quiet was comforting, almost like a gentle breath surrounding him, and for a moment he allowed himself to simply exist without thinking of diplomacy or etiquette. He remembered Lady Vailith's words from the night before, the promise of a reward that was not of material wealth or influence, but something far more subtle. He had spent the evening in a kind of silent communion, sharing presence with someone from a world so different from his own, and the memory of it filled him with an unexpected warmth. When he rose, the chamber door opened and Lady Vailith entered again, her movements fluid, her expression calm but curious. "Good morning, Elias," she said. "I hope your rest was sufficient." Her eyes held a gentle amusement, as if she knew he had slept uneasily, pondering the meaning of their previous night. "It was enlightening," Elias replied, choosing his words carefully. "I have never experienced anything like it." "It is difficult to describe." He felt slightly awkward, as if he were trying to explain a color to someone who had never seen it. She nodded, her gaze thoughtful. "You understand more than most humans could. That is why I asked for your presence. Our rituals often seem strange, even uncomfortable, but they are designed to reveal truths, not to test weakness. Do you wish to continue what we began?" Elias hesitated. He had no doubt that he wanted to continue, yet he was still cautious. "Yes," he said finally. "I want to understand." Lady Vailith motioned for him to follow her. She led him through a series of corridors, each more magnificent than the last, until they reached a small chamber with walls that shimmered like liquid crystal. At the center, a circular platform was raised slightly above the floor, covered with soft mats and cushions. The device that had emitted gentle light the night before was present here as well, its hum almost soothing. "This is where our true ritual takes place," she explained. "The reward is not physical, it is emotional. It is an opportunity to share thoughts and feelings freely without fear of judgment or misunderstanding. You may participate if you are willing to be honest, not strategic." Elias took a deep breath. He had prepared himself for complex negotiations, for linguistic puzzles, for the subtle dance of alien social hierarchy. But nothing had prepared him for this kind of challenge. Still, he felt a spark of confidence. He had always believed that human empathy and honesty could bridge gaps no matter how wide. Now, it seemed, he had a chance to prove it in a way that mattered more than any treaty or contract. Lady Vailith gestured toward the platform. "Sit with me. You may speak or remain silent. The choice is yours as long as your presence is sincere." Elias sat across from her, the soft cushion sinking slightly under his weight. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The hum of the chamber seemed louder in the silence, and Elias became aware of his own thoughts in a way that was almost intimate. He realized that he had been trained to suppress emotion in professional situations, to focus on observation and logic, but here, that approach would be useless. This was a place where sincerity mattered more than skill or knowledge. Finally, he began to speak, cautiously at first. On Earth, humans often connect through shared experiences, through stories, music, laughter. Even in silence, we understand each other through gestures, expressions, small acts of care. I believe that connection is what gives life meaning, even more than power or achievement. Lady Vailith listened intently, her expression unreadable but her eyes bright. When he paused, she spoke softly. "We are taught to conceal emotions, to present perfection at all times. Vulnerability is considered dangerous, yet you are vulnerable without weakness. It is remarkable." Elias felt a flush of surprise. No one had ever described his openness in this way. I suppose that is simply how humans are. We do not always hide what we feel. We share it even when it is uncomfortable. We believe that honesty creates trust. "Trust," she repeated, testing the word on her tongue. She shifted slightly, the light catching her eyes in a way that made them seem almost liquid. "Perhaps humans have something we lack. We are skilled in strategy, in control, but we fear exposure. You have given me a gift by sharing this with me." The conversation continued for hours, though it did not feel like hours. They spoke of many things: memories from childhood, dreams for the future, the simple pleasures of life that transcended cultural differences. Elias told her about rain falling on the streets of his home city, about music that made people smile, about moments of laughter and quiet joy that could make the world feel lighter. Lady Vailith shared the loneliness of her status, the way her responsibilities often prevented her from forming genuine connections, the subtle burdens of expectation that weighed on her shoulders. Elias realized that the reward he had received was not simply access to an alien ritual. It was an invitation into the life of someone who had been isolated by circumstance and status. And in return, he had offered something uniquely human: understanding, patience, and an absence of judgment. The connection they shared was electric in its quiet intensity, a bridge not of metal or language, but of emotion and trust. When they paused, Lady Vailith smiled faintly. "I underestimated humans," she admitted. "You are not as fragile as we sometimes believe. You navigate life with courage that is not always visible. It is admirable." Elias felt a swell of pride, but it was mixed with humility. "I think perhaps we admire your resilience in return," he said. "Your world is complex, full of rules and expectations, yet you allow yourself moments of honesty, even within the constraints. That takes strength, too." They spent the remainder of the day in a series of silent exchanges, speaking less and listening more, until the ambient light in the chamber shifted to a gentle twilight hue. Elias realized that the initial fear and confusion he had felt at her whispered words had transformed into something far more profound. He understood now that the reward was not a test of desire, nor of physical courage, but of emotional intelligence. He had been asked to offer presence and honesty, and in doing so, he had connected across species and culture in a way that no other human had achieved before. Lady Vailith stood at last, moving to the edge of the platform. "The ritual is complete," she said. "Not because of any ceremony, but because of what has been shared here. You have given me insight, companionship, and a reminder that connection does not require similarity. It requires openness." Elias nodded, feeling a sense of accomplishment and serenity unlike anything he had experienced in his diplomatic career. I am honored, Lady Vailith. I did not know what I would find, but this is more meaningful than I could have imagined." The noblewoman's smile deepened, almost imperceptibly. "It is said that humans are fragile, that your species is weak among the stars. Yet here you sit, demonstrating a strength that is rare, even in the most advanced civilizations. You connect without expectation, without calculation, without the need for control. That is a power we often forget." Elias allowed himself a small laugh, surprised at the ease that had settled over him. Perhaps that is all humans ever hope to offer. Not control, not power, not dominance, just understanding, connection, trust. Lady Vailith nodded in agreement. "And in that you have succeeded beyond measure. You are remembered not only as a guest, but as a bridge between worlds. This is your reward." As the day drew to a close, Elias and Lady Vailith parted from the chamber. He left with a new understanding of Sarian culture and of himself. The quiet power of being present, of listening and sharing truth, had transformed what could have been an awkward and confusing encounter into a profound experience of mutual respect and admiration. Elias knew that when he returned to his own people, he would carry more than tales of an alien world. He would carry proof that humanity's greatest strengths were not technology, weapons, or wealth. They were empathy, honesty, and the courage to connect with others without expectation. And in that, he had not only won a remarkable reward, but had also helped bridge the gap between two very different civilizations. The evening sky over the city of Sere shimmered in soft violet and gold, reflecting on the crystal towers and casting patterns that danced like fireflies. Elias paused at a balcony, taking in the beauty of the world and feeling the quiet triumph of what had been accomplished. Lady Vailith joined him silently, standing at his side without need for words. Together, they watched the horizon, two beings from very different worlds united by trust and understanding, a quiet promise of friendship that would endure far longer than any ceremonial reward. And in that shared moment, Elias understood something fundamental about humanity and the universe. Sometimes the greatest victories were not measured in conquest or achievement, but in the simple act of being present, sincere, and willing to connect. That was the reward he had received, and it was far more valuable than anything else he could have imagined. It was a testament to human strength, a reminder that even among the stars, empathy and honesty could shine brighter than any weapon or machine. Elias returned to his daily routine with a sense of purpose he had never felt before. The chambers of the Sarian court still echoed in his mind, the soft hum of the ritual, Lady Vailith's quiet laughter, and the subtle exchanges of emotion that had connected him to a culture so unlike his own. He realized that the universe was far larger than any map or star chart could reveal, and yet it was not the distance between worlds that mattered most. It was the connections formed across that distance, the shared understanding that made life meaningful. News of his interactions with Lady Vailith had spread quietly through the court. Unlike what Elias might have expected, there was no mockery, no judgment of his unfamiliar customs. Instead, the Sarians were intrigued. Here was a human who had navigated their rituals with honesty and humility, who had shared presence without expectation, and who had, in the process, earned a kind of respect few outsiders could ever hope to attain. Invitations began to arrive, not only from Lady Vailith, but from other nobles curious to meet the human who had mastered the subtleties of Sarian trust. Elias accepted cautiously, aware that each encounter would test his ability to maintain sincerity in a culture where appearances and status were everything. But he felt ready. He had learned that connection was not a matter of clever words or careful strategy. It was about presence, about listening, observing, and offering a part of oneself without reservation. The reward from Lady Vailith had been the first step, but now it was time to understand how this principle could resonate beyond the private chamber and into the wider world. One morning, Lady Vailith invited him to a public gathering of nobles. The hall was grander than any he had seen before, with soaring ceilings and floors that reflected the shifting light of the city outside. Elias noticed immediately that the nobles moved with a precision that made his human instincts for casual movement seem clumsy. Yet Lady Vailith's eyes met his, offering a silent encouragement. She had seen the value of his presence, and she wanted the others to see it as well. As Elias took his place among them, he realized that he was being observed not as a guest but as a participant in something far more significant. The nobles were testing him, but not through words or challenges. They were observing how he engaged with others, how he listened, how he responded. Every tilt of his head, every nod, every thoughtful pause was being noted, and Elias understood that this was another kind of ritual, a communal one, where understanding and empathy were valued above status or wealth. Throughout the day, Elias shared stories from Earth. He spoke of human festivals, of music that lifted spirits, of acts of kindness that created ripples far beyond their origin. He described the human tendency to celebrate small moments, to find joy in connection rather than in dominance. The Sarians listened with curiosity, sometimes puzzled, sometimes delighted, but always attentive. They had never encountered a culture so willing to show vulnerability and trust as a matter of course. To them, Elias' approach was revolutionary, even if he did not realize it himself. Lady Vailith observed silently, noting the way the nobles reacted to Elias. Some leaned forward, their eyes bright with interest. Others exchanged subtle gestures, communicating in a language Elias could not fully understand. And yet, he felt no pressure to perform, no need to impress. His only goal was honesty, and that alone was enough to open doors that centuries of diplomacy had failed to unlock. As evening approached, Lady Vailith invited Elias to return to the chamber where the previous ritual had taken place. He entered with a sense of anticipation, remembering the gentle hum of the device and the soft cushions that had once felt so foreign. Now they seemed familiar, almost comforting. It was as if the room itself recognized him, as if it had stored the quiet moments of trust he had shared with Lady Vailith and was ready to reward him further. "You have done well today," she said, her voice warm. "You have not only honored our private ritual but have extended its principles to the wider court. That is no small achievement." Elias felt a wave of modest pride. I only tried to be myself, to share what I know and listen in return." "And yet," Lady Vailith replied, "that is exactly what makes humans remarkable. You do not seek to dominate, you seek to understand. That is a power that cannot be measured by wealth or technology. It is a power of the spirit." For hours they sat together, this time without words. The ritual had evolved. It was no longer about sharing stories or exchanging thoughts. It was about silent understanding, about feeling the presence of another being so completely that no words were needed. Elias realized that he could sense Lady Vailith's emotions without her speaking them. Her satisfaction, her curiosity, her amusement, and her trust were all visible in subtle shifts of posture, in the rhythm of her breathing, in the light in her eyes. He began to reflect on the implications of this. If humans could offer such presence to another species, to beings so different from themselves, what else might be possible? What bridges could be built if the same empathy and honesty were applied to other civilizations? He felt a thrill at the possibilities, a sense that humanity's greatest strengths had only begun to be recognized beyond Earth. Lady Vailith finally spoke, her voice breaking the quiet. "There are those among us who believe that humans are weak, that your species cannot survive in the wider universe. They are wrong. You have shown courage and intelligence not through combat or conquest but through connection. That is something we can all learn from." Elias nodded, humbled. "I hope that my presence can encourage others to see that value as well. It is a gift, but it is not mine alone. Humans share it, and perhaps that is our true strength." The noblewoman smiled. "Then you have done more than receive a reward. You have changed perspectives. You have begun to shift the way our people see your kind. That is far greater than any ceremonial honor." The night passed in a series of quiet exchanges, laughter, and reflection. Elias shared moments from his childhood, anecdotes about human mistakes and triumphs alike, while Lady Vailith shared her memories of learning the complex rules of Sarian etiquette, of moments of fear and embarrassment that had shaped her into the noblewoman she had become. Through these exchanges, a deeper bond formed, one based on mutual respect and genuine curiosity. It was a reminder that connection was not about sameness, but about openness to difference. By the time Elias finally prepared to leave, he understood that the experience had transformed him. He had come to Sarai expecting to navigate alien customs carefully, to survive with diplomacy and intelligence. Instead, he had discovered a deeper principle: the power of empathy, the strength of sincerity, and the ability to connect across any divide. Lady Vailith had offered him a reward that was not material, not strategic, not transactional. It was something far rarer: recognition of humanity's essential value. Outside, the city sparkled under the alien stars, its towers reflecting the last light of the distant sun. Elias paused for a moment, taking in the view and feeling a profound sense of accomplishment. The human presence in this alien world had shifted not through force or cunning, but through something far more enduring: understanding, honesty, and trust. He knew that the relationships he had begun to form here would have lasting effects, not just for himself, but for humanity as a whole. Lady Vailith joined him silently, standing beside him without speaking. Together, they looked out over the city, sharing a moment of quiet reflection. Elias felt a sense of kinship with her that transcended words, a bond formed through mutual respect and the courage to connect. In that moment, he realized that the whispered words that had startled him in the beginning had been a promise of this very experience, a recognition that humanity's strengths were not in weapons or domination, but in empathy, sincerity, and presence. As they parted that night, Elias knew that the journey was far from over. The universe was vast, full of civilizations and cultures waiting to be understood. But he also knew that humans had something unique to offer, a gift that could bridge even the widest gaps, the courage to connect, the willingness to be present, and the honesty to share themselves without expectation. That was the true reward, and it was one he would carry with him for the rest of his life. Elias returned to his quarters, reflecting on everything that had transpired. The quiet strength of humanity, he realized, was not measured in battles won or treaties signed, but in moments like these, moments of shared presence, of honest connection, and of understanding across difference. He knew that wherever humans traveled in the universe, this strength would follow, quietly powerful, quietly transformative. And he smiled, knowing that he had witnessed something extraordinary. The day a human, through nothing more than empathy and sincerity, became a bridge between worlds. As he drifted into sleep, the soft hum of the chamber accompanied him, a gentle reminder that the universe was not only vast and alien, but full of possibilities, and that the human heart was capable of reaching across the stars in ways even the most advanced civilizations could. Never anticipate, Elias awoke to a gentle hum of light filling his chamber. It was not the same light as before, but familiar enough to feel comforting. Days had passed since his first ritual with Lady Vailith, yet he still felt the quiet impact of those experiences. He had become aware that something about his presence in Sere was beginning to ripple outward. Conversations in the court had subtly shifted. Nobles glanced at him with curiosity rather than suspicion, and whispers followed him through corridors like faint echoes. It was not power nor wealth that drew attention, but the sense that this human carried something unusual, a clarity of presence and sincerity that was almost magnetic. Lady Vailith entered as he adjusted his robes. "Good morning, Elias," she said with a soft smile. "The council has requested your insight for today's deliberations. They are eager to see how your perspective differs from ours." Elias blinked in surprise. "They wish to hear me speak. About what?" "About understanding," she said simply. "About connection. About what humans can teach us." She stepped aside, allowing him to follow her into the hall. Her eyes reflected a faint amusement, but there was seriousness too, a recognition that he carried influence not by status, but by example. The council hall was grander than any room he had yet entered. Crystal beams stretched overhead, reflecting a soft, prismatic glow across the assembled Sarian nobles. Elias felt a momentary twinge of nervousness. He was not accustomed to being observed by so many, especially in a society that prized precision and subtlety above all else. Yet Lady Vailith's reassuring glance reminded him that this was not a performance, it was an opportunity. He was invited to speak first, a rare honor for an outsider. He took a breath and began simply. "On Earth," he said, "humans live by understanding one another. We are not the strongest, the fastest, or the most powerful species, but we survive and thrive because we connect. We share feelings, stories, and care for one another. That is what allows us to build societies, to cooperate, and to solve problems together." The council listened intently, leaning forward, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and surprise. One of the elder nobles spoke softly, questioning his point. And you believe this connection is stronger than our laws, our strategies, our planning? Elias nodded. I do. Laws and planning are important, but without trust and understanding, they fail. Connection allows people to act together without fear, to collaborate even when they are different. That is a strength your people can use, in ways no rule or device can create. Lady Valeth's eyes shone with quiet pride. Elias had captured the attention of those who had once regarded him as a curious novelty. More than that, he had challenged assumptions, not with force or argument, but with honesty and perspective. The nobles exchanged subtle glances, some nodding slowly. The seeds of curiosity had taken root. As the day passed, Elias was invited to meet with smaller groups of nobles individually. Each conversation revealed new cultural subtleties, the way Sarians interpreted gestures, the subtle hierarchy in expression, the unspoken expectations in social interaction. Elias listened more than he spoke, offering insights only when he felt it would foster clarity. Slowly, he realized that the Sarians were beginning to mirror his approach. In their private discussions, they paused to listen, to consider feelings and perspectives, rather than relying solely on established protocol. Humanity, through one person, was influencing their entire social fabric. In the evening, Lady Valeth led him to the ritual chamber once more. The familiar hum of the device greeted him like an old friend. This time, the room felt different. Not because the light or cushions had changed, but because Elias himself had changed. He carried confidence in his understanding, tempered by humility. He had seen how small acts of presence could ripple outward, transforming attitudes without force or compulsion. You have done more than participate in the ritual, Lady Valeth said softly. You have shared it with others. Today, you have begun to change perceptions. That is a gift rare among all species. Elias took a seat, allowing himself a moment to reflect. I never imagined that my presence could have such an effect, he admitted. I only tried to be honest and attentive. That is exactly why it works, she replied. Sarians are skilled at observation, but we are cautious, often slow to trust. You have shown us a method of engagement that does not rely on hierarchy or expectation, only sincerity. They spent the evening in quiet exchange, much as they had before, though now the atmosphere carried a subtle sense of expansion. Elias felt that each gesture, each shared story, was no longer confined to the chamber. It extended outward into the court, influencing how nobles related to one another. He understood that the ritual was evolving from a personal experience into a societal lesson. Elias reflected on how humans might approach this on Earth. Could a society that prized connection over dominance, empathy over fear, change cultural norms even subtly? He realized that even small acts of sincerity and presence could transform relationships, communities, and ultimately, the perception of a species. The Sarians were living proof. Lady Valeth observed him carefully. There is a principle humans have, she said finally, that seems simple but is rare, that understanding another being's feelings is as valuable as any achievement. That is why you succeed where others would struggle. Elias nodded. I think humans are taught from early life to share and cooperate to find common ground. Perhaps that is why we can connect with so many different kinds of people, and now different kinds of beings. You have reminded us, she said, that connection is not weakness. It is strength. The next days passed with Elias traveling through different parts of the city, meeting Sarians from outside the court, scholars, artists, and thinkers. Everywhere he went, his presence brought subtle change. People began to speak more openly, to consider one another's feelings, and to value cooperation alongside status. Elias understood that his time on Sere was a living experiment in empathy. Humanity's strength, quiet and understated, was being observed and applied in real time. One afternoon, a young noble approached him hesitantly. Sir Elias, she said, I do not fully understand your ways, but I see that your manner of communication encourages honesty. How can I learn it?" She looked genuinely earnest, eager to emulate the quality she had witnessed. Elias smiled. "It is not a skill that can be taught, only practiced. Listen more than you speak. Observe without judgment. Share your thoughts honestly and trust that others will meet you in the same spirit. That is all it takes." The young noble nodded, inspired. "I will try," she said, bowing slightly. Elias felt a warm satisfaction. Influence through understanding rather than power. This was what he had hoped to achieve, though he had never imagined it could be so immediate. Even Lady Vailith seemed transformed by his example. She moved with a lighter step, her expression softer, her interactions with others more patient. She admitted privately that Elias had reminded her of the joy in connection, in trusting someone without calculation. In that trust, she had rediscovered a part of herself that had been hidden under the weight of duty and expectation. As the sun set over Sarai, Elias and Lady Vailith stood once more on the balcony overlooking the city. Light shimmered across the crystal towers, casting soft reflections like floating lanterns. Elias felt a profound sense of achievement, though not for personal gain. He had witnessed something remarkable, humanity's subtle power to influence through empathy, sincerity, and presence. Lady Vailith turned to him, her expression thoughtful. "You have done more than we could have anticipated. Your presence has reminded us of the value of trust, of honesty, of connection. Even our oldest traditions will begin to shift because of what you have shared." Elias felt a quiet pride. "I did not intend to change your culture," he said. "I only hope to understand it." But perhaps that is the nature of connection, to touch others without meaning to influence not through force but through openness. "That is exactly it," she said softly. "Humans possess a strength our species often overlooks. It is quiet, unassuming, yet transformative. That is why you have been a bridge between our people." The city lights glimmered as evening deepened, casting a gentle glow over everything. Elias realized that this journey was not merely about one human visiting an alien world. It was about demonstrating a principle, that sincerity and empathy could transcend barriers, that humanity's true strength lay not in domination or fear, but in understanding and trust. As he retired to his quarters that night, Elias reflected on everything he had experienced. The reward Lady Vailith had offered, once mysterious, even alarming in its phrasing, had become clear. It was not a ritual of physical indulgence, nor a test of superficial bravery. It was an invitation to reveal the best of what humans could offer: presence, honesty, empathy, and the courage to connect. And in embracing that gift, he had not only earned her respect but had influenced a civilization in ways far beyond what any treaty could accomplish. He lay down, listening to the gentle hum of the chamber and the distant lights of the city twinkling below. He understood, now more fully than ever, that humanity's greatest gift in the universe was its ability to connect, to offer trust without expectation, and to touch the hearts of others through sincerity. That was the true reward, one that would last far longer than any ceremony, and one that would endure as he continued to walk among the stars. And in the quiet, Elias drifted to sleep, content in the knowledge that humanity had left an indelible mark on Sarai, not through power, not through strategy, but through the enduring strength of empathy, connection, and the courage to simply be present.